Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a new RStudio project, and then we will create a Quarto document. We will type some codes, type some text in it, and we will render it as a PDF, not PDF, but maybe a Word file or as an HTML document. Now, what exactly is RStudio project? RStudio project is it's a critical component for our course. We are going to use R quite extensively, and we will be using various data set. We will save these files on our computer all the time. And one of the challenges that you will face is that when you really want to access a data set into your RStudio session, you will find it difficult to locate it on your computer. And wherever it resides, maybe you downloaded it and stored it in your download folder. Sometimes people put them on their desktops. Sometimes people are more organized and they will create directory structure and they will save it in specific directories. Um, However, every time figuring out where you saved certain data sets, where you saved certain code files can be really daunting. In addition to that, if you use multiple computers, you will find that having all these data sets and accessing them can become a complex issue. This happens because when you use any data set in RStudio, by the way, this is not a RStudio problem. This is a this is a requirement for any programming language. So if you are using R or Python or any other language, if you have to import an external data set, you will have to provide the full path to that data set on your computer. For instance, on a Windows computer, it will look like C colon slash slash and then documents folder, and then within that you may have DA6233, which is our course, slash something something, right? And then there will be a, let's say this is a CSV file saved, and then you will access it on that computer. However, if you change that computer, you will realize that that path may not hold anymore. For instance, I use a Mac and I also use a Windows machine. Uh, so on a Mac, there is no concept of a dedicated drive like in Windows machine. So there is no C drive in a Mac. I can name it whatever I want, and uh, you know I can partition it and call those partitions something different, right? Different, give them different names. So how do I manage these problems, right? And this project is going to solve this problem for you. Okay, so I would strongly advise you to always have a RStudio project for anything that you're working in, right? And there is no cost to creating a project. Now, if you have to ask me, like in a layman's term, what exactly is a project? Well, it's just a folder. It's a dedicated folder for all the stuff that you are doing. Of course, there will be some, um, there are some benefits to having that dedicated folder, and there will be some like there is a metadata file that will be created and added to that folder by RStudio automatically. But at the end of the day, it's a dedicated folder. So just keep that in mind. And you will notice that we will create a specific folder while we are creating a new project. So to create a new project, go to your RStudio IDE and select File. And from here, you have these options, right? New file, new project, and so on. Select New Project, right? Okay, it takes a couple of moments. Then it gives you all these options. Now, in our case, we are going to create a new directory. You can also create a project in an existing directory. Uh, let's start with this, the first one. So we have a fresh project starting in a new project directory. Now, in this case, we'll select the first option again, new project. Now, that as you can see that they have a little bit more like advanced options also available to you. We do not need any of this at this point. We'll just go with this new project. All right, now it is asking me first that this is going to be the new folder name, but then it asks me what is your path, where do you want to actually save it, right? So here is, before writing my directory name, I'm going to select the folder where this project will reside. So select this, browse, and I'm going to go to our fall 2024 um, folder. So this is the course folder I've created for me. It is for my computer, and within that I'm going to create. So here is where we are going to add this, right? New project directory. So I just navigate to that folder wherever it is. For instance, if you plan to put everything on the desktop, well then this is where it is going to go. Well, in my case, as you can see, there is nothing on the desktop, right? So I like to keep it clean like that. um, so I'm going to go to fall 2024 folder and just say open. So it is not going to actually open that folder, it's going to just add the full path to that folder. Now within that, so here is, right, fall 2024. Now within that, I'm going to create a directory. I'm going to call it intro, right? Just intro. So what will happen now is that RStudio will create a new directory, intro, in that fall 2022 folder. Okay. After this, if you want and if you plan to use GitHub, you can also create a GitHub repository. But for this, you will have to have a GitHub account and have to have a token for that. Um, so we will skip it for the time being. You can also use something called as RENV or RENV. Uh, this is the virtual environment for R. Again, at this point, we will skip it, and I will explain to you later what is the benefit of this specific option. All right. You also have an option of opening this in a new session. So RStudio allows you to have multiple parallel sessions. So you can have multiple windows open like these, and they can have multiple projects in them. So if you are running something in one project, you can always go and work in parallel on something in the second project. We do not want it at this point, so we'll just go with all the default options selected and say create project. All right. Now notice that how I'm already in my project folder, and in fall 2024 over here, you will notice that there is this this intro folder that is added. You don't see the full name here, but that you get the idea that it is. I told you that this is not a very like a full-fledged explorer. Or there you go, now it is showing full intro, right? So within fall 2024 there's an intro folder, and within that now it has added a new file called as intro.rproj. This is the R project or RStudio project file. That is, this file, as you can see, is a really tiny file with only 205 bytes, right? So this is not a big file. This file will never get too large because it contains only the metadata for this project. Metadata means it will contain information on how many files are there, what are their paths, where this file resides, all that kind of information. But it does not actually have very, like, none of your code or data sets will reside inside this rproj file. So this rproj file is just, as I said, it just contains the metadata. All right, so now we are in this project folder. The benefit of being in the project folder is, recall that if you go back to the previous videos, in one of the videos I showed you, when we want to get the working directory in R, we type get wd, and that tells you where exactly is your working directory. That means which is the directory that are going to use to look for data set, look for your code, look for saving images, plots, all those things. It needs a default directory. And as I said, that you can have that pointed to, let's say, the desktop, right? But now, because we created this R project, look what happens. Now, if I go to the console and type get wd, so get the working directory, this is the function in R, and I type execute and see what I get. I get the working directory directly pointed to the folder in which we are currently, right? So you can imagine that your all your tasks are now much easier, because anything that you open, anything that you save, will automatically get saved in this intro folder. You don't have to then later think about the folder in which this might be saved by R, because R is not saving anywhere else. It is just saving it in this folder. Okay. All right. So that's how we create a new RStudio project. Now let's create a Quarto document, a new document. So I'm going to say a new file in Quarto document. You have seen this in the last class, in the last video, I mean. And here, as previously, I will go with the defaults. I don't want to change anything here. Here is the output. The output will look like it's an HTML file. I'll just create this. You can make the changes to this document later on. You have option of making a lot of changes in this document. So first off, you'll see that there is some text in written in between these three dotted lines, right? On in line 1 and line 4. So what are these? So this, whatever is written inside this, is called as YAML code, YAML code. YAML is a short for yet another markup language. Okay. um, so this is a language, interestingly. So it has what you see over here has certain meaning. It is a syntax. So you cannot write anything at random. For instance, in this case, I'm saying title, and it has to be in quotes, because it is passed to the uh, R or RStudio session as pure string variable. So here I can say something like introductory document. All right. So this introductory document will go uh, as a title of this document. Notice that the title of the document is not the file name, right? So our file name is still showing untitled one. So what if we want to change that? So I'll go here and click on the save file, and you'll notice that again automatically it is going to get saved in that intro folder, right? So great, this is fantastic. So I'll just again say something, say like a intro document. Yeah, that's the file name, right? Okay. After this, uh, it has some placeholder text, and you can read that. I will tell you that there are a couple of things. Uh, if you're aware of HTML, you can bring them those like HTML tags and all those things very easily into Quarto, because Quarto is ultimately, it is a combination of Markdown, which uses a lot of HTML stuff, right? And so because of that, you can directly use it. So here in this case, when you are writing this text using as a sort of like a prefix with the two hash signs, what this means is that in HTML terms, this is header 2. We're talking about H2, right? Header 2. This is, so in HTML there are 6 header levels. So header 1 is really large and big, and this introductory document that you see over here, by default, this is going to be the header 1. This is large document name. It will start showing up at the top of the page, and then Quarto will be on a smaller font compared to introductory document, but still it is going to be much larger and bold because it's header 2. So if you don't want it that big, you can make it smaller. So for instance, if I just copy this and paste it here, and for our own understanding, I'm just going to show you different sizes, right? So I'm just going to type it like this. Now it is not going to show you in this Quarto file, uh, it is not going to show you with different sizes, I mean, right? In this Quarto file, it will start showing up different sizes only after you render this document. So what exactly is rendering? So this is a valid document. There is no problem with this document. So I can actually render this. So when rendering means basically that you want to convert this document and display it as a specific output. Now, in our case, we have already um, told Quarto that this will be an HTML document. The format is HTML. And notice that how I'm not passing HTML in quotes, because this parameter HTML is a uh, is a uh, is a is a special value, right? So if you want a Word document, you have to type docx, and it will output it as a Word document. If you want PDF, then type PDF, and it will output as PDF. But if you want, let's say, some other document like a Excel file, well, there is no format currently that is going to output it. So you can type something there, it is going to give you an error, right? So that this parameter HTML here is a relevant parameter that it understands. So how do I render this document? Well, I can simply say render by clicking this button render here, right? It will take some time, and notice that we are here, it is doing it in this background jobs, that um, that tab that we did not explore in the previous video. All right, this is the document, this is how it is going to look like. So this, it opened it in my browser directly, so I have two monitors, so that is why, and the browser was open in the second monitor, so that's why you didn't see it getting launched. But this is how it looks like. So you notice that the introductory document header is so big, right? Because this is H1, I told you. This is the H2, and then this is H3, then H4, and this has become smaller and smaller. All right. You'll also see that hyperlinks renders nicely as a hyperlink. Then your R code shows up in a uh, in a box, in a gray box, and the output of that code is displayed underneath that box. Similarly, it gives you some options, and notice how this specific um, text is using a different font and different font color. It is using monospace font and a purple color. So what's the deal with that? How did we change that font color automatically? So let's go in this document and understand this one by one. So first of all, I don't need this, so I'm just going to delete this. All right. Remaining document, you notice that how we literally are typing this as English. There is nothing else we are doing, right? So we just start typing this as English, plain English. And then here we specify, right, just in English. And then we literally again paste our link over here. There is nothing complicated over here, right? Like, so this is pretty straightforward. So it says, and after that, so whatever it tells you, after that, it gives you an example. It's a running code. Now notice over here, we say when you click the render button. Now with render, the word render has these two asterisks surrounding it. So what does that do? So this is something that you will have to keep in mind while working with Markdown. This is a Markdown way of saying this is going to be bold. Okay. If you in reduce, like, remove, I mean, one of those asterisks, and now if you render it again, this is going to be, instead of bold, it will be italic. So I'm again rendering it. It will show up in the, all right, so over here, this is the, I'm just going to say view in web browser. Oops, it is not showing me. Oh, sorry, there you go. Right, so you over here now notice this, right, render, and this is italic, and this is, so what if I want bold and italic? So the, you can do, I think, 3 stars, but personally I prefer it to use it this way. You can also use, so italic can also be rendered using underscore. So you can use underscores like this, and now with this it will be, and I'll re-render this. All right, and with this now I will have bold and italic. There you go, bold and italic. Okay, right? So then it says click the render button. A document will be generated that includes both content and the output of embedded code. You can embed code like this, and 1+1 it says so the output will show up here, right? 2. You can add options to executable codes like this. So here is a way in which you can provide some additional information to this code chunk. So there are some specific keywords that you have to keep in mind now, these arguments that you have to remember. For instance, echo will decide whether you want to show the code in the output or not. Echo equal to false will mean that just show the output, do not show the code that generated that output. Notice that in this case, we did not say anything about whether you want to display the code or not. The default for echo is true. So that's why we saw 1+1 and as a code chunk, and also its output shown right in that rendered HTML file. However, if once we say echo equal to false, you are not going to see 2 times 2, but you are just going to see the output of that 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay. You can also make some additional interesting changes to this code, right? So for example, here I want the output, I want to show the code, but I do not want the output. So is there any way to turn off the output? Okay, well, there is a way. So I'm just going to use this um, same similar argument. It's called as eval, and this eval argument, I'm going to set it to false. So what this will do is that it will render the code, because remember, echo is true by default. So the 1+1 in a nice gray box will be displayed in the rendered HTML output. However, you will not see the output 2 anywhere here. So all right, so just save this and render it again. I'm going to open that HTML file, and here you will see that now I have 1+1, but there is no output that is shown. And over here, I get the output, but I don't know what was the operation that was done to get this. Now you might be wondering, what's the use of all this? Well, the use is actually there are a lot of uses of this, but the easiest thing to remember is that for the second one, where you have echo equal to false, you will do this quite often when you are actually creating reports for your your managers or your colleagues in your organizations, because they are not interested in the code that generated the output. They want to see the output. So when you are creating nice plots, you may have actually written a lot of code that generates that output, but you are going to hide all of that code by just using echo equal to false. So it remains in the code, but when you render it, it just hides that code. Now, where do you need eval equal to false? Now, typically in an organizational setting, you'd not need it with the people who are not tech savvy, right? Because tech savvy people want the output, not the input, input or generating the code that generated that output. So when do we need this eval equal to false in that case? Well, you will need it when you are showing it to, let's say, your colleagues who are not that interested in the output that you are generating, but they want to know what code you used, and you just want to type all the code without actually showing them the output, because the output might be very specific to a specific data set, but the code is generic. So that code might work on multiple other data sets as long as they have similar structure. So you are interested in sharing the code with people and not the underlying data set, because they have their own data set. They can import that and execute it. They don't care. So that is where you will use this eval equal to false. A lot of times when people teach R coding, they give these notes to students, and that is what they will do. They will actually create this, eval equal to false, and then they will share the code with students and, hey, look, this is how the code is written, but they are not showing the output necessarily. So then the students will have to run that code on their own computers and generate the output. So there are reasons why you may want that eval equal to false. It is also possible you may want to have eval equal to false, when in your report you have, let's assume that you have lots and lots of code written in your report, and there are like 15 or 20 different outputs that you have generated. They might be tables, they might be uh, visualizations, and this detailed document is for, let's say, your immediate boss. But the boss of your boss wants only three plots. This person doesn't want more than, more than what is necessary. They want to see the big picture. So you have this document. Are you going to edit this document entirely to remove all the code which was generating the remaining extra figures? Well, I wouldn't do that. I would instead just use this eval equal to false in all those code chunks which I don't want to show to my superiors. I will just keep the three plots that person wants to see. For three of them, I will use eval equal to true, which is default, and for remaining all of them, I will turn them off. I do not have to make any major changes to my code, and you're home free. By the way, you can use multiple options in the same code chunk. So here, for example, I don't want to show this. I don't even want to show the output of this. That is where that you want to basically hide it from your boss of the boss. You will do this: eval false, echo false. They don't see the code, and the code is not generating any output, so they don't see any output either. So what happens if I do this? So ideally, what you should see is that there is this, you say you can embed code like this, and there's nothing, and we directly go to you can add options, that next line, right? That is how you will see this output. So there we are. There you go. This is how this line is gone, right? So there are multiple options possible here. Many of them are really helpful for you. For instance, you can decide the size of the image that you will output from this. So you can even provide that figure width and all these kind of options. You can name each chunk if you want, some like want to refer to that later. So labeling is possible. So you'll have to read a little bit more on this using this quarto.org. So this document format Quarto is really powerful, as I mentioned to you in the last class. In when I keep on saying class, I meant video, and this one single letter over here is telling this chunk that, hey, this has to be R, right? But if you wanted some other language like Python, you could type Python there and then run it. Now it is not going to be as easy to do that in RStudio IDE, but let's say that you are doing exactly the same, like you're running all this code into some other IDE that can handle both R and Python at the same time. Well, you can have one chunk in R, another chunk in Python. That's the beauty of using Quarto. Quarto is not tied to a specific programming language. That's the benefit. All right. So one last thing before we stop. Um, what if I want to output this not as an HTML, but as a Word document, because I want to make some changes later? Sure. So all you have to do is say format equal to docx, then we render this. Right, and he's going to save this again in the same folder. Now it is not going to, of course, display this in our browser, so I'm going to open this from my folder directly, and I'm going to show that to you in a moment. Just going to launch my Word. You can also output this as a PDF file, but for PDF you need to, there you go, here is the document I created and just now opened. So this is how it looks. Pretty nice, right? So you can have your report written nicely and rendered in Word document. And this is, by the way, this is like a more like an intro session, right? So in this case, I'm not showing you a lot of complexities here, a lot of functionalities, but you can even use a ready-made template for a Word file, which will already have certain fonts for you, certain layouts and certain colors and all those things already decided for you. And so you can output this document to that template, and that template will render it really nicely. All right. One last thing, actually, I realized just now that I did not tell you anything about this very interesting way of writing this text. Notice that when we created this, even the Word document, right? So what you had is a over here is a different font. Now there is no different color here, but this is a different font, right? This is a monospace font. Um, so in Quarto, you can display something as a monospace font by wrapping that text into this backtext. And this backtext, now it depends on your computer keyboard, but these are not quotes, by the way. These are not quotes. They are called as backtext. And these are usually on the top left corner of your keyboard. So you'll have to, depending on the keyboard layout, I mean, there is no guarantee where exactly it should show up. But the on a Mac keyboard that I'm using right now, but this is an external keyboard. It is with a tilde sign and the backticks. They are together, and they are the leftmost top leftmost key on my Mac. Uh, of course, there is a bunch of keys like function keys on the top row, but I'm talking about the numeric keys, right? Number keys. So it is the leftmost on my keyboard. So look for that there. I'm just explaining this more because I just want to make sure that you do not use quote by mistake and then expect the output to be a monospace. It is not going to work. Um, and so you can do that for anything. For instance, over here, let's say I want to say this generated, this whole thing generated include, let's say this I want to convert as a monospace. I do that. Let's go back to our HTML formatting and render this code and see how this looks like. There you go. Now see over here, generated, that includes. This is the part that we you quoted in, I mean, sorry, covered in backtext, and that is what you see here, right? All right, so that's a quick introduction to how to how to create a new RStudio project, and then create a Quarto document, and then output that Quarto document um, as a HTML or as a Word file. Now for PDF, all you have to do is this, type PDF. But if you are going to do it for the first time, there is a very good chance it will not work, and it will tell you uh, to install some other software. This software is not a software that is like it is just going to be an R installation, but it is also going to be an external, like a additional software installation on your computer, because the rendering typically happens through uh, there's a translation that is happening. This is markdown. That markdown gets translated into something called as LaTeX, and then LaTeX gets translated into PDF, converted into PDF. So in my computer, is because it is already there, it is going to work, and it is going to show me the output as a PDF file. And there you go. It opened in my browser, but this is how the PDF document looks like. And here also I can do exactly the same. Like I can provide more, you know, information about like what font to use, what layout to use, and if I want to use any colors, I can do a lot of these things, right? So as an example, from this year onward, your MSDS syllabus um, is available in your Canvas directly, right, through some there's an external tool called as Simple Syllabus. That is mandatory, and that is what you will see. However, all these years I've been using Quarto or R Markdown to create the syllabus. So this syllabus that you see over here, this is your syllabus for 2024, which I created using Quarto and this LaTeX. So this is a nice PDF output, and you can see that it has all these links. I can use different colors. So, and then I have used here uh, a box, colored box. Here I have used a table, and the table has alternate um, gray lines, highlighted lines. So all these things are possible. I can even include um, pictures like this. So this is all there in your simple syllabus. So you won't get this specific syllabus from me, but this is entirely created in Quarto. Now you might ask me, why am I doing it? The reason is that I basically create this syllabus once a year, right? So I don't want to type everything again and again. So I just write my code. The only things I need to change here is the schedule, and some of the topics I move around a little bit. The books are identical. The grading is identical. I don't change any of that. So all I need to change is basically your schedule, the homework submission, and the dates I'm in, and finally the content will move around a little bit. That's it. And just to make those changes, I would rather do that programmatically than every time open a word file, and a word, depending on the version, it will screw up everything. I just don't want to get into that all this problem. So I prefer to just directly use, or to even create my syllabus, right?